Not bad.
Here's a speech I've been looking forward to all week from my favorite manual, the Storytelling Manual. Michael Lavery is going to tell us the folk tale, Babe the Blue Ox. Michael Lavery.
My grandpa used to spin a yarn about a feller called Paul Bunyan and his pet ox. I can remember sitting around the pot-bellied stove with all the other grandkids listening to my granddaddy tell tales handed down to him from when he was a young pup in Minnesota, back where Paul Bunyan grew up. This particular story I'm about to unfold is about how Paul Bunyan found his pet ox, Babe. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, I present to you the tale, Babe the Blue Ox. Well, one winter it was so cold for so long that the geese flew backwards and the fish moved south. Well, it got so frigid at night that the words used to freeze solid before you could hear them, and folks had to wait until the next morning at sunup when the words would thaw out and they could understand what folks were saying the night before. Well, Paul Bunyan was walking around his lumber camp one day in the winter of the blue snow, and he was knee-deep up in snow when he heard a funny kind of sound somewhere between a bleat and a snort. Well, he looked down. He saw this little, tiny, teeny blue ox just a-hopping around, raging and snorting on account he couldn't jump over the snowbanks. So he reached down and picked him up by the scruff of his neck, dusted him off, and took him back to the lumber camp and set him by the fire, where he fluffed up and dried off. But he remained as blue as the snow that had stained him that color. So Paul named him Babe the Blue Ox. Well, any critter that grows up in the lumber camp of Paul Bunyan grows to massive proportions, and Babe was no exception. Folks would say if they stood still long enough, they could see Babe growing right before their eyes. It took 42 axe handles and a ding plug of tobacco to fit between Babe's eyes. They said it took a whole day for a murder crows to fly from one horn to the other. And the camp laundryman used to hang the clothesline off of Babe's horn on account it was so high up that the laundry would dry extra fast. That drew the accolades of all the camp lumberjacks. Well, Babe used to help Paul all around the lumber yard. He used to eat 30 bales of hay, wire and all, for breakfast. It took 6 men with pitchforks a half an hour after breakfast every morning just to get the wire out between his teeth. He'd then eat a ton of grain and pester Sam, the sourdough Sam, the cook, for more snacks in the afternoon. Paul used Babe for a number of things. Babe was notoriously good at pulling anything that had 2 ends on it. So Paul attached him to the twisty, pesky lumber roads and had him straighten them out. Well, they would get so straight and narrow that there'd be all this extra road left over that Paul just cut off, rolled up, brought back to the lumber yard, and made a new road. Well, Babe had another lot of uses. He also towed the heavy tank of water that they used to use to wet the roads down in the wintertime to make them extra slippery to haul the logs on. But one day the tank wagon sprung a leak, and well, that flowed south and became the mighty Mississippi River. You might have heard of it. once Babe was done doing that, he would get tired in the summertime because the roads weren't as slick. So Paul used to have to paint the roads white. He'd whitewash them, and Babe didn't know, but he thought it was kind of funny that the logs weren't flowing along as easily. So Babe didn't particularly like the summertime. But one summertime, Babe was dreaming of how it would get to be winter and the ice would get cold again and the logs would run down the roads better. And he looked over a mountaintop and he saw a pretty yellow calf just grazing in the field. So he stepped over the mountain and introduced himself to Bessie, the pretty yellow calf. And it was love at first sight. Babe wouldn't do a lick of work till Paul paid the farmer next door to take Bessie home back to the lumber camp. So Bessie, being a lady, she grew to the massive yet dainty proportions that any mate of Babe the Blue Ox would fancy. And her eyelashes used to tickle the lumberjacks across camp whenever she blinked. Well, Bessie loved summer and Babe loved the winter time, and that was the only bone of contention between the two of them. And Bessie grew so fast, and she was making enough butter to grease the griddle for pancakes every morning, and there's sometimes enough left over to butter the toast. All the lumberjacks loved Bessie. She grew frail and thin one winter when she was particularly down about the weather. So Paul had his clerk, Johnny Inkslinger, fix up some goggles and put green lenses in there so she'd see the snow but think it was green grass. That cheered her up. She fattened back up and made some more cream. They made plenty of butter. In fact, there was enough butter left over to grease the lumber roads in the summertime. And that made Babe just as happy in the summer as he was in the winter. And, well, folks, friends, that's the tale of how Paul Bunyan found his ox, Babe. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did telling it.
Let's take 2 minutes and write him up.